Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Several people sent me this story, and it sounds a lot like a couple we've done recently about people posting reviews and then getting in trouble for posting the reviews. And, I recently traveled, and when I was in the process of traveling, I got several questions as I traveled. How was this? How was that? And they were asking me to rate things I had just experienced. Airplane flights, rental cars, hotel stays, and that's what plays into this one. According to Newsweek magazine, and 4 people sent it to me, Jack Dutton wrote the story. Grandma kicked out of hotel after giving it a 3-star review. So she reviewed the hotel while she was there, mistake number 1, and the hotel heard about the review, and rather than saying, gee, constructive criticism, they said, get out. And, it does cause problems. She's from Georgia, and she and her 6-year-old granddaughter were apparently booted out of their hotel room one evening after rating the business as 3 out of 5 stars on a review website. And she gave them 3 stars. I actually once stayed at a hotel that was 0-star rated, literally 0 stars. I found out why when I stayed there, but 3 stars ain't bad. Now, the woman is 63 years old, and her granddaughter and she were going to bed on the first night of a planned 3-night stay in September at the hotel in Georgia. And this is all according to the local news channel WXIA. They report on this. She said that at 8:40 that evening, her cell phone rang. And the hotel manager was on the phone saying he had called the police and they had to leave the room. He had called the police. Now, there is a dispute about this, whether they'd called the police before dealing with her or after some kind of confrontation. But she said, the man is screaming at me, saying, you get out now. I call the police. That's what she told the Atlanta-based news channel. My granddaughter's clinging to my leg and crying so hard. This was scary. It was just horrifying. Now, the manager had called the police after his customer answered an email at hotels.com, who apparently she'd booked through. And they asked her how her stay was. And I recently stayed at a hotel, and before I even checked in, they said, how was your check-in process? Because they thought I checked in earlier than I had. But they jump on this right away, and they send you the question, and some people look at it and go, I'll respond right away. Well, you might want to rethink that. It's going to be a negative review. So she said that's what happened. The manager called the police after getting the 3-star review, and the 3-star review she had responded to, and she put the language, rundown, pool's not open, toilet doesn't flush well. Now, rundown, of course, is an opinion. If you think someplace looks rundown, it may or may not be. There's no way to gauge that. I don't know if there's any actual measure where you could objectively measure how rundown something is to see if it's rundown or not. Whether the pool's open or not, that seems pretty clear-cut, but the toilet doesn't flush well, that could be a problem. But the man who manages the hotel called 911. And this is one of those crazy things. People call 911 for the dumbest reasons. And it seems to me, and I've mentioned this before, that if someone calls 911 and says, I think I have an emergency here, and they describe something that's not an emergency, I've always thought the dispatchers should say, we have a non-emergency number you could call. Because what is the emergency? Someone just rated your business poorly on hotels.com. That's not an emergency. But the manager told the dispatcher, we are getting to refund because they have reviewed that the room is dirty and the place is run down. So the man actually called 911 when asked, what is your emergency? He said, we are getting ready to refund because they've reviewed that the room is dirty and the place is run down. So he called the police to say he's going to refund the money to the woman who complained. Now, when asked about the call, the grandmother said he was basically saying, you get out, you lie, you gave me a bad review. And I'm just sitting there going, oh my gosh, is this a prank call? At the end of the 911 call, the manager said, she's not happy with the room. That's why we had to let her go. She can find a better place. So the guy called 911, in essence, I'm being very generous here, in essence, to have the woman evicted from her room, okay? Because she'd prepaid for the room. So the fact that he wants her ousted, apparently, he thinks, well, the police can come and do that for me. He said that the hotel had to remove her because she complained about the business he says several times. Now, I don't know if Hotels.com lets you leave more than one review at a time. The only review we've seen is the one that says, run down, toilet doesn't flush well, pool's closed. But he says that she complained about the business several times. He said, we let her know lots of times to stop calling us. And so the implication here is that she had called to complain, presumably about the toilet and the pool and the run-downedness. And he says, if you're not happy, change the room or leave the place. And he says, they called me at least 10 or 11 times in maybe 1 hour. Everything is not right. And it makes you wonder. And this is one of those things you kind of got to connect some dots and maybe fill in some blanks for yourself. But if it's true that he's at the front desk and she's in a room calling, wouldn't you send somebody up there to talk to her? Because presumably the only way to check if her toilet is working properly would be to actually look at it. I mean, I'm not a plumber. Maybe I could be wrong. So he told police that they would refund the woman who had paid for her stay in advance, but she did not receive the money back for several months. And here's the other problem, is that she paid through Hotels.com, not directly to the hotel. So when he kicks her out, she's going to apply to Hotels.com to get the money back. And of course, Hotels.com is going to call him up and go, we need the money back because this woman wants a refund. We don't know what he told Hotels.com. That is the issue. So Hotels.com told her that refunds were not allowed. This is non-refundable, even though she was kicked out. However, after the TV station WXIA contacted Hotels.com, 2 months after the incident, they did, in fact, provide her with a full refund. Most businesses, including hotels, are allowed to ask customers to leave for almost any reason, okay? If customers refuse, they can be arrested for trespassing. And of course, if they eject you for no reason, you might have legal recourse against them. It just depends. But the manager told police that the woman refused to leave, but the grandmother said she never refused to leave. She says that basically she called down to complain about things, and then he said, get out. But she's saying that he didn't say that till he called the police. So the headline of the story is, Grandma kicked out of hotel after giving 3-star review. But the real, to me, kicker in the story is the manager called 911. And if you ever see stories they talk about people calling 911, we all know that that's the emergency number. And you'll hear stories about people calling 911 for the most inane reasons of all time. And I've heard and seen interviews with people who work at 911. And they'll say that something happens like the Pistons win the NBA championship and people call 911, woo, we won, yeah, woo, they hang up. It's like, what? Why'd you do that? But people will also call for very, very dumb reasons. And the problem is that we don't know how many operators they've got in any given city. I mean, I understand that somebody does, but I don't know off the top of my head. But if people are jamming up the phone lines with stupid calls like this, what happens if a legitimate emergency call comes in and it gets stacked up behind some dumb calls, okay? So someone's having a legitimate emergency over here, and this guy wants to throw a tenant out for giving him a 3-star review. And by the way, if you run a hotel, you are in what we call the hospitality business. And if someone criticizes your business on a legitimate review site, and it's a real review, it's actually somebody who's staying at your hotel, and you're unhappy with their service, so you're unhappy with their review, so you kick them out? Call me crazy, but it sounds to me like you might need a bad review. You might deserve that review. You might, because you lack the hospitality of somebody who's in the hospitality business. But that's my knee-jerk reaction. And again, all I know is the story. But it appears the guy admits, yes, I kicked her out because she was complaining too much. He says it's not because of the 3-star review. He says she was complaining too much. Of course, part of her complaining too much might be the 3-star review. Who knows? So it's a crazy story. And it happens here in America, in Georgia. And a Georgia grandmother and her 6-year-old granddaughter were ousted from their hotel room after they complained about the conditions on Hotels.com. The manager says he ousted them because they complained about the conditions to him, But be that as it may, net result, they got kicked out and didn't get a refund until after a TV station got involved and said, why don't they get a refund? And they got a refund. So there you go. Newsweek.com had the story. Jack Dutton wrote it. Ed, Tina, Dwayne, and Edward, different than Ed, sent me the story, said I should look at it, and I'm glad I did. Grandma kicked out of hotel after giving 3-star review. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. I feel like I'm diagonally parked in a parallel universe.